DeepTech is a buzzword that gets people excited, but have you ever wondered what are the key ingredients for making the DeepTech revolution a success? In the concluding session of the Hello Tomorrow Regional Summit, the CEO of Hello Tomorrow is here to share what he thinks are the makings of this promising revolution.
Hello everybody, I'm happy to be here with you to talk about DeepTech. When we created Hello Tomorrow 10 years ago, startups were mostly about digital platforms or mobile apps. If you wanted to succeed, you had to build a digital marketplace. Everybody was trying to build the next Uber of something. And it was frustrating because there was so much potential in science, but too few startups were trying to bring breakthrough in science to the market. We were PhDs at that time, me and the other co-founder of Hello Tomorrow, Xavier Duportet, and we could see, hanging around the lab, so many crazy things being invented, but really they were staying in the lab. The researcher usually didn't really want to create startups, and we wanted to change that. 10 years later, things have changed a lot. Elon Musk is now more popular than Mark Zuckerberg, and to be precise, it happened in January 2015, if you look at the screenshot from Google Trends. I don't know if this is the tipping point, if the history of DeepTech can be interpreted in the light of the popularity of those two icons, but it does show that we now have role models in something else than digital startups. And this is what was missing at that time. And this is one of the reasons why we created Hello Tomorrow, to identify the DeepTech pioneers and promote them to inspire the next generation. And also to help them by connecting them to investors or industrial partners. If we look at more data points than only the popularity of Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, we see that DeepTech has already started. It is really a revolution. The investment in DeepTech startups has doubled in 4 years. Looking at the number of applications to our DeepTech startup competition, it shows the same trends. It went from 1,500 to 5,000 in 5 years. And they come from 128 countries. So it is a revolution, and it is worldwide. Actually, the APAC region is doing pretty good. It's catching up with the US, and it's even leading in the fields of electronics, advanced materials, and on par with the US in photonics and drones and robotics. If we look a little bit closer, we see that Singapore is the most, we could say, DeepTech intense country, meaning that this is where there is the most investment in DeepTech startups per capita. Looking at the total numbers, China is responsible for the vast majority of the investment in the region. So it is a revolution, but I would like to insist today on the fact that beyond number, it's really a new horizon of opportunities that is opening up. It's really also a new approach required to grasp those opportunities. And I would like to insist really about the fact that it's not only about technology. Of course, it starts with technology. All the technologies that are having some first application but still require some significant R&D to reach their full potential. For example, in digital, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, blockchain. In life science, CRISPR, the new genetic engineering tool that got the Nobel Prize this year for 2 women, which is allowing to engineer DNA at a precision never reached before. In inorganic matter, there is all the nanotech and advanced material technologies. So it's quite impressive to see that at the same time, we have breakthrough happening in digital, in life science, and in the inorganic world. And what is even more impressive is to see that those breakthroughs are actually converging, really reinforcing their potential. For example, synthetic biology is the convergence of advances in biotechnologies like CRISPR, but also in robotics, automation, allowing to industrialize lab manipulation, which otherwise would take ages and be way too expensive, and also artificial intelligence, allowing to make sense of the huge amount of data very quickly. So really, deep tech is not only about, yes, it started with technology, but it is not about technology only. We've been studying the deep tech revolution with the Boston Consulting Group for a few years already, publishing several important reports. And the latest one that you can find on our website is about the 4 drivers of this revolution. Really the key dimension that anyone needs to be aware of. And those 4 dimensions are, first, the fact that emerging technologies changes what is possible or not. And we need to be able to explore, to grasp the new opportunities. The second dimension is the fact that startups play a critical role in deep tech innovation in all industries, even where you would not expect them. The third dimension is the fact that beyond startups, it's really the startup approach, being focused on problems rather than solutions, and being agile, that is important even in the corporate world. And the last key ingredient is the fact that it's now really about ecosystem. If you want to be a leader of the deep tech revolution, you don't only need to be at the top of your game internally, you also need to be the best at engaging ecosystems. So if we go into the first dimension, the fact that emerging technologies open up new horizons of opportunities. If you consider, for example, artificial intelligence or maybe soon quantum computing, it enables to make sense out of huge amount of data in a few seconds, which would never be possible with traditional algorithms. And if we consider, for example, biotech, we can now produce meat in labs instead of chicken or cows. So it really does change what is possible and what is not possible. And things that we've been taking for granted for years or decades are now different. It's, as I was saying, it's like being back at the day where internet just started. Of course, you could imagine at that time, or maybe the few people who knew what was the internet protocols and so on, they could imagine that we could use it to exchange information, to send emails. But at that time, who could have thought that we would have social media like Facebook influencing elections, or that algorithm would choose the music you listen to? Well, it's the same. We are back at that time for deep tech. For example, I would like to talk about synthetic biology, biotech, because I think that's where there is the most potential in the decade to come. We've been using biotech already for a while. It started in the pharmaceutical industry 30 years ago. It makes sense because that's where we are ready to pay almost any price for a new solution because it concerns human health and life and death. But now that we have new biotechnologies like CRISPR, which got the Nobel Prize, as I was mentioning, and also automation and artificial intelligence that combined with biotech create the revolution of synthetic biology. It's now cheap enough to really enter any industry. And we have, for example, solutions to build packaging out of CO2. We can really consider living organisms like yeast or bacteria as a kind of living factories. And by changing their genetic code, we can program them to not build anything we want, but build new kind of molecules of materials. And it's leading to the solutions I was already mentioning, the fact that we can now, for example, create artificial blood with yeast. We can use cells to absorb CO2 from the air and in the end build plastic packaging made of CO2. This is no science fiction. This is already happening. Several companies, including startups, are already working on this. So to to grasp those opportunities, we need to understand how it's going to impact and change whole value chains. And a few people can, and that's the issue that needs to be fixed. But the thing is, for most companies, when they become successful, they lose the ability to explore because they are structurally organized around one thing. It's to exploit their current business model. And it makes sense because that's where most of their revenues and profit is generated. And this is a very powerful center of gravity. But every business life cycle has an end at some point, and those life cycles are accelerated by emerging technologies. So companies, while they are exploiting their current business model, they also need to prepare for the future. That's what is Microsoft doing. For example, they have a synthetic biology team in Cambridge in the UK. You may wonder what the hell is Microsoft doing in biotech. Well, they are exploring. They are prototyping new approaches of biological data storage or even computing. It's totally different from the approach they are used to take, but that's the whole point. While they are busy exploiting their current business model, and you know that they do that quite well, they are also building the future. We are ourselves with Hello Tomorrow working with several companies regularly to help them explore leveraging all the startups that we have in our network, either to inspire them or to work with them to co-develop some new projects, new businesses. And I can tell you that few companies are like Microsoft. There is really a big gap that needs to be filled, and all the business leaders need to take notice very fast. And if we use startups as a way to create a kind of awakening with our corporate clients, it's not a coincidence. It's because they are usually one step ahead. And this is true in every domain. And this is the second important driver of the deep tech revolution. I think the best example to show that it's really in every domain is to consider nuclear fusion. In 2006, a consortium of 35 states gathered with a budget of $20 billion to build the first big fusion reactor in 2035. Today, we have Commonwealth Fusion System, a startup created in Boston in 2018, which plans to build a first small reactor, fusion reactor, by 2025 with a budget of $200 million. So it's really a striking picture. On one side, 35 states, $20 billion, 30 years. And on the other side, one startup with a budget of $200 million, so a fraction, and only 7 years. And they are not the only one. It's not the only startup trying to achieve a net production of energy through nuclear fusion. There are others doing so. So what used to be an area of competition between states, not even corporates, is now an area of competition between startups. And this is, again, I guess you can imagine if it's true in nuclear fusion, it's true in every industry, every domain. Beyond startup, what is important to notice is that it's really the approach which is important. And that's the third driver of the deep tech revolution. Of course, startups are very efficient at being agile and fast because they are organized to prototype rapidly to find the right product market fits instead of exploiting a well-defined business model. But large companies can and should also integrate this approach. And many actually do so quite successfully. And they can even have an advantage when they combine this agile approach with more traditional engineering roadmaps and approaches that allow to build complex products like rockets in the aerospace industry. So you can see that on one side you have startups breaking into markets where you would only expect big companies to be present. You have also on the other side big companies that behave a bit more like startups. So the frontier between the two is getting blurrier and blurrier. And it is also, this continuum is also strengthened by the fact that we see also more and more successful collaborations between startups and large companies. And this is not only about collaboration between those two actors. This is really about ecosystems. And this is the last drivers I wanted to talk about today, the last driver of the deep tech revolution. From the inception in research to the market, it's really, the deep tech innovation is really based on a whole ecosystem comprising many different actors. Universities and research labs that create breakthroughs in science, new technologies, but also talents, startups and big companies who work on bringing those new technologies to the market, investors financing the startups, the state also financing the early stage startups, but also research, and defining the rules by which all the other players will behave, will play. And also, of course, the clients, which are quite often companies in deep tech because it's a lot B2B. And what we call here the ecosystem enablers, it's all the incubators, accelerators, or networks like Hello Tomorrow. And it's not represented here, but I think the social environments of the startups, the family, the friends, the colleagues are also important because you need a lot of support when you take sometimes crazy decisions. So it is really about ecosystems, and to be a leader in the deep tech revolution, you really need not only to be the best internally, but you also need to be the best at engaging ecosystems. And this is quite difficult because the deep tech ecosystem is very fragmented, especially since it comprises thousands of startups. It's international. It's constantly changing, moving. That's why with Hello Tomorrow, we do crazy efforts to identify the best startups worldwide by doing partnership with hundreds of universities, accelerators, running competitions like the one I was mentioning. And then we help governments or companies engage with the startups. Or we help them also explore what are the emerging trends in this ecosystem. So to wrap up, deep tech is not only about technology, it is really a revolution. It is new opportunities and new approaches required to grasp them. And the four important drivers are the fact that emerging technologies really changes what is possible or not. So it's like it never happened in the last years or even decades. It's a new horizon of opportunities opening up. And we need to be able to explore again, to grasp those opportunities. The second driver is the leading role of startups in deep tech innovation in every industry, not just where you would expect them. So it's important to be able to work with them. The third driver is the fact that beyond startups, it's really the startup approach, agility, what we call lean startup, but also like design, build, test, learn cycles, for example, which are required to efficiently bring new solutions to the markets fast enough. And the last ingredient is really the role of ecosystem, how it's important today, if you want to be a leader, to engage with the right ecosystems, not only to be the best internally. If you want to know more, feel free to reach out. You can also go on our website and download the reports we published, including this latest one. And you can also engage with the hubs we have in several countries. In the APAC region, you can engage with the hubs in Singapore, in Japan, and in China. Thank you.